Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my incredibly talented and always insightful co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
Oh,
I am a little punchy. I taught for 7 straight hours, and then I drove home an hour, and then I talked with you and another Euphonium player. I was outnumbered.
This was definitely one of my favorite episodes. Matt and I go way back, and I had to dust off some cobwebs in my brain that I haven't thought about in a long time. Man, there were some funny stories in this episode.
And by Matt, in case you just subscribe and you didn't just download this, it's Matt Tropman, who is a former Euphonium player from the President's Own Marine Band many moons ago, and now teaches at the University of Arizona and is still breaking lots of ground on Euphonium and is recording a new album as we speak. And we get into a lot of stuff with him. And in fact, if you want to hear him, he's a phenomenal euphonium and tuba player. He is playing a recital, which is going to be live streamed, which is Wednesday, September 19th, which is coming up pretty soon here at 7:30 p.m., and that is local time in Tucson. The link is in the show notes, but he always plays really interesting stuff too. This is not just going to be like standard lit that you've heard 1,000 times. So if that sounds even remotely interesting to you, check it out because he's amazing. What do we got here for the people here, Lance?
I want to take a moment to thank the folks at the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University for their support of the Brass Junkies. They are longstanding sponsors, and we really appreciate it. If you want to find out about the going on at the Mary Papert School of Music, you can click on the link in the show notes. And special thanks to Jim. We're going to have to put it on hold, Nova. For his support and spearheading of this effort.
And thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com. There's a reason why we don't usually do this at 11 p.m. on a Friday. Or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you to everyone who's gone to iTunes and left us a rating and a review. We are, those are slowly but surely streaming in, which is awesome. That's the best way to help other people to find the podcast. Also, thank you to everyone who has subscribed, whether it's through iTunes or through your favorite podcast app, so that you just automatically get the dulcet tones of Lance and I just automatically beamed to your phone. Why would anyone do that? Now that I'm hearing myself say those words, it sounds like a bad idea, but it would mean a lot to us if you'd follow through on that bad idea. Anything else, Lance?
Patreon.
Oh, Patreon. That too. So this was the Patreon. There's 4 things that we have to cover, and I never notice, and I forget a different one each time. Notice how I always say, "Is that it?" Because I know that there's something else. Yeah. So this was a legendary bonus episode. It was like 25 minutes long. Yeah, it's like 20. Yeah, because Matt kept on going like, "Well, I could tell another story." Robert Ludlum made his podcast debut.
Didn't see that coming.
Did not see that coming. Turns out Matt played a concert, which he did. I can't even tease it because it's legendary. So I will say this, that Matt had the entire President's Own Marine Band all with their heads out the window of the bus to try to crane their necks to see what was going to happen next. And the only person in the band that was not on the bus was Matt Tropman, and he happened to be standing next to Robert Ludlum.
And the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps.
The head of the whole thing. So, Matt, you're a national treasure. So, yeah, don't ever change. So, but this one gets real serious in a couple of spots, as you're going to hear. He had something happen to him almost 10 years ago that was really life-changing. And, but also it's the usual levels of jackassery. So this was a great one. So I'm glad that we were finally able to get him scheduled. And without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Euphonium and Tuba superstar Matt Tropman. And today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by a badass euphonium player. But aren't they all badasses, Lance?
You're half right.
What? Matt Tropman, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. It's nice to talk to you guys.
I'm so excited to talk to Matt Tropman.
Yeah, you've been on the list for a long time, and it's like we knew we could get you because we knew you wouldn't be busy. So we just kind of dragged our feet on that, and then finally we were like, all right, it's time. So the two of you knuckleheads have gotten into a lot of trouble. You and I have gotten in a little trouble at Tuba Conference a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But you and Lance, why don't you lead this here, since you know where the bodies are buried, and so does he.
Well, it's only been nearly 25 years that Matt and I have known each other, which is not that much.
It's a quarter century, dude.
Here's one of my favorite Matt Tropman stories.
Let's just tell stories about Matt while he has to listen, and then we can go.
So Matt and I went and did a improv comedy course together at Comedy Sports in Washington, D.C., and Matt was freaking awesome.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
But he didn't I don't think you thought you were as funny as you were. And I will cite as evidence, there's a improv comedy exercise called What Are You Doing? And one person starts doing they pantomime some sort of action. And the other person goes, what are you doing? And so let's say I was pretending to play golf. I would say, I'm flying a kite. And so then the second person would start pretending to fly a kite, and then person one would say, what are you doing? And they say, well, I'm making an omelet. And then you just go back and forth. It's just as an exercise. And Matt was up there, and I don't know if do you remember any of this?
I totally remember taking that class with you, and actually it's funny that you brought up improv, because I now, 20 years later, started doing it again, but really? I don't remember this moment.
Oh my God, this was one of my favorite. Well, it's 20 plus years ago. And so Matt is up, and they go, what are you doing? And he kind of froze up, and he goes, potato. Which killed the room and the exercise. It was everybody was laid out, and Matt was like, I'm no good at this. I hate my life. I'm leaving. I was like, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. How are you not doing this?
That was a really fun class that we took together.
It was. Oh, God, I had a great time doing that. So you're doing comedy improv now?
I do. When I moved to Tucson, I didn't know anybody. I moved here in the middle of the summer in 2014, and I saw an advertisement for a class, and so I just decided to sign up, and I've been kind of doing it since I moved out here.
That is fantastic. So are you part of a troupe then?
I am. Actually, that's the show that I have tonight, is why I can't stay beyond midnight Eastern time.
What's the name of the group?
So it's called the Tucson Improv Movement, and then our particular act that's performing tonight is called the Soapbox.
And is it long form or sketch, or what do you do?
This one's long form, and we call it the Soapbox because we invite people from around town, somewhat notable people, I don't know, the vice mayor or somebody like that. And they come and they tell stories, short stories, and then we improvise based upon their stories.
The vice mayor of
That's
Tucson.
Fantastic.
It's a big job.
It's a bigger job than I have. I shouldn't really glass house and all.
I also remember doing you and I had taken the class, or we're in the middle of the class, and we went out to Battle Creek to play with the brass band of Battle Creek, and we were in the Copper Bar, and somehow we ended up around a table. Not somehow. We ended up around a table, you and me and Palafian and maybe Pat. And we were talking about the improv thing, and they were like, Sam was like, all right, show me one of the things. And so then the four of us started doing improv comedy exercises in the Copper Bar at whatever o'clock.
Nice. I think I remember that. I might be just manifesting a memory because you're talking about it, but
That'll do too. It's okay. We don't judge.
That'd be a good Euphonium solo record name, Manifesting a Memory.
yeah. But like the cover, it would have to
Euphonium
be
and organ.
standing with like a finger on my chin and looking off to the side and maybe up. With like a coat draped over one shoulder.
Lance, he told me that he had a hard out tonight, and I said, "You play Euphonium, so you don't have a gig. So what's going on?" So
there you have it.
Okay, so here's another memory, and actually, Andrew, before the recording started, Andrew was talking about The Office, and I said that Michael from The Office and Matthew Tropman and Lance LaDuke share us something in common. There was an episode of The Office where there was a one of those signs that lets you know how fast you're going. And they were all in the parking lot and they were running at this thing. And Michael ran at it and a car went by at the exact same time and it registered 35 miles an hour. And he claimed that that's how fast he went. So now rewind 20 years and we are coming back from one of the evenings at the Copper Bar. And I'm in a car with a multitude of famous brass players, and Matt Tropman yells, "Stop the car!" And so the driver stopped the car, and there was one of those signs. And Matt got out with no explanation. There was like, "Stop the car." The car stopped. Matt got out and started charging full bore at this thing and caused it to register whatever the speed was. And I don't remember. And Matt, you don't know this. Our listeners may know this story because we've told it before, but about
Matt, are you sitting down?
I'm sitting down. Yes.
Okay. Have you peed recently?
11 months
right
ago?
before we started, I think so.
Yeah.
Good.
I just peed just now.
Just wait for it.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm done. Okay, so 11 months ago ish, we and I apologize if you've heard this story, listeners, but it's a good one. So my fiance and I were standing out inside we were standing in front of our house waiting for our two teenage sons to come outside so we can go get tacos. And there was one of those signs out in front of the house. And I remember being inspired by a young and sprightly Matt Tropman and his ability to cause that thing to register. And I thought...
You're blaming him for this?
No, I'm crediting him.
Okay.
No. The inspiration, Matt Tropman. The mayhem, Lance. This is totally my F up. So
I'm riveted. I can't wait to hear where this goes.
I ask Hannah, I say, hey, do you think if I run at that thing, I can, get it to register a speed? And her response was, do not do that. And so I ran at it and I got it to register something like 12 miles an hour, 13 miles an hour, something
pretty good, man. Nice.
Not bad. I had just turned 50. Thank you very much. And so I was rather impressed with myself. And now the teenage boys come out and her son ran at it and he registered like 16 miles per hour, something like that. And then my son came out, who runs cross country and track, and he's a picture of fitness. He ran at it and got 18 miles an hour. Well,
nice.
Not to be outdone, this old fat bastard decides he's going to try again. Long story short, because many of you have heard this, funniest home video situation, like the top half of the body ceased conversing with the lower half of the body.
Oh my
Gravity did what gravity does.
Like a 1-year-old.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I fall forward. My quote, plan, unquote, was to roll. I am spherical. So I thought, well, there's a chance. And so I land full on my right shoulder. I get, I separate my right shoulder, get a contusion that required stitches on my right eyebrow. My glasses went flying. I had road rash on both hands, both legs, both arms.
It was pavement.
Pavement. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And this is with his then girlfriend and his kid and they're all just watching.
And right after then you proposed marriage?
Yeah. Yeah. I was already on my knees.
From the asphalt.
That's right. So I knew there were many indications that this was a bad situation. The vision, like I could see blood dripping down, like in front of my eye. A. B, I turn around and Hannah's son is holding my glasses. Like he's holding them for me. Like, here you go, dumbass. The dumbass was implied. He didn't say it. He's a very polite young man. They all had this look of shock on their face, and this like, that was hilarious and awesome and terrible all at once. And so then we go inside and I go to clean myself up, and I'm like washing the road rash off, and I can't raise my right arm to wash off my right hand. And I thought, oh, well, no, that's not good.
So at that point, you weren't totally certain if it was separated or not. You just knew it was messed up.
No clue. I just knew it was messed up. And it was only, apparently, if you're going to separate your shoulder, I did what you're supposed to do, which is just to barely separate it. Like it didn't require surgery. I was basically incapacitated for a month or 6 weeks. It's still not quite right. I still have a Quasimodo thing going, but that's just me.
So do you have a cool scar like on your forehead now?
I do have a bit of a scar, to the right of my eyebrow, and I look very rugged.
Nice.
Yeah, very rugged. So, see, we have something in common. Matt Tropman was uninjured in his attempt. Oh. Just saying.
Well, I'm glad you're more or less okay.
More or less.
And congratulations on being engaged. You mentioned that before we started, and I didn't know that, so that's awesome.
Yep, I'm getting married in January. Did you know that, Andrew?
I did not.
Yeah, there you go. See? You heard it here first. Yeah, early January, 4th of January.
Oh, actually, we have an interview scheduled that day.
Oh, well, have a good time.
It's with Arnold Jacobs. So, but, sure we can get him rescheduled.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
So, Matt, what are you up to these days?
What am I up to? We just started the year here at the University of Arizona. We finished our second week today. And I had a chance to go visit my family a couple weeks ago in Michigan. And before that, I went to Spain earlier this summer for the Tuba thing over there. And then I spent some time up in San Francisco doing a kind of weird recording session that you guys might be interested in for a sound library. And then I took a really long way home through Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Park. So that was kind of like my summer vacation.
Cool.
And at the very beginning of the summer, I recorded some stuff here at our recording studio in my attempt to, after 20 years almost, maybe release a new album.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, what's on that album?
So it's stuff that I like, but I think as I get older, like things that I like might be boring to other people. It'll be my first ever tuba recordings. So I have a couple of, do you know the Vern Reynolds horn etudes?
Yeah, those are easy.
Those are really hard, and but some of them are really super fun. So I have a couple of those. I have the Bach E major flute sonata on tuba, and I have one other thing, I think. Oh, the Haydn chaconne, Paul Haydn. And then on euphonium, I have, I'm sure you guys sweated through all the Charlier etudes during your lifetimes.
Yeah, those are hard.
And then a French composer named Jean-Marie Cotet came out and wrote accompaniments for all 35 of them.
No kidding.
Wow.
And I've heard of things like that before, like so-and-so decided to, write an accompaniment for something that was previously unaccompanied, and they're kind of okay, but they're not maybe quite as interesting as you would hope, but these are super cool. They sound, when you hear them with the accompaniments, it sounds like they were made that way to begin with. So that's a little sort of esoteric euphonium trumpet nerd project that I've been doing, is slowly recording about 10 or so of those.
Wow.
You recorded, it might be my favorite. I'm trying to think of what else would be up there. But in terms of repertoire, I think my favorite euphonium CD, and actually I stole the idea and we adapted it for Boston Brass, which was the
cool.
Romeo and Juliet West Side Story thing. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was so long ago now. 2000, I think, is when we recorded that. But basically, it's a CD of two large pieces, an arrangement of Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet for euphonium and piano, like a lot of the favorite bits from the orchestral suites. And then for euphonium, piano, percussion, and bass, a condensed version of West Side Story.
See, I stole that idea and we did it with the quintet, with brass quintet, string quartet, piano, and percussion.
Oh, cool. I'll have to pick that up. I haven't heard that.
I don't think did we record it?
We did not.
Ah, dang.
It was hella fun though, man. It was really great.
Yeah, that's the
first.
You were the inspiration.
The first time that we did that concert was one of the highlights of my career. We were at the Esplanade in Singapore with the Tang Quartet, who I'd been friends with for a long time. And it was amazing. There was over 1,000 people there.
Wow.
It was awesome.
What do you remember? I mean, it's been a little bit ago. Do you remember what was the inspiration for that? I mean, what caused you to think to do that? We're so used to, and let me get on a soapbox for a second.
Please.
It's like, let's go play the faster, higher, louder stuff. And show
I love that stuff.
All how wonderful and great we are. Or let's record like the stuff that all the students should know. Fine. Okay. That's okay. Or let's go record these pieces that were written for me and maybe they're worth being recorded or maybe they're not. And then Matt Tropman decides, I'm going to take these two interpretations of Romeo and Juliet that were done by amazing composers, and I'm going to set them for the instrument that I happen to play. And so now I'm in. Like, you're like, I'm the audience. I'm the demo for that. But do you remember what caused you to go in that direction?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's like a specific kind of moment. The guy who did the arrangements is now the director of the Marine Band, Jason Fettig. And he and I were good buddies in DC. He's also a brilliant clarinetist and really great arranger. And we would just be talking sometimes about the typical euphonium jokes about how our repertoire is, the higher, faster, louder, or these like 20-minute 4-movement concertos that you can never program. Mm-hmm. And just talking about music that we liked. And I was like, would you consider writing some of this Prokofiev stuff out for me? And he actually did most of that during one tour, like on the bus. And
no kidding.
Once we started to do the Prokofiev, and he would like bring in sheets and like, try to play this. And okay, and like we'll change the key, or we'll leave this out, or we'll add this in. And then we decided to add the Bernstein. That seemed like a natural fit. And luckily, there were so many great colleagues and friends in the band who were willing to play that stuff with me that we flew out to ASU and recorded it there.
I just loved that. I just loved it. It's great. I just think it's one of my favorite albums, and it just happens to be Euphonium. I mean, I think that's the key, is that you just made great music, you played it great, and they're cool arrangements, and then it happens to be that instrumentation.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I've got about 10 other big orchestral pieces that I would like to do that with, and I've never done that. So,
well, get on it. What the hell?
Yeah.
What are some of the other pieces you'd want to do?
I'd like to do a suite from El Amor Brujo by Defaya. I would like to look at maybe Scheherazade, and
there you go.
Some big kind of like programmatic pieces seem to lend themselves well.
Cool. Where did you record at ASU?
In whatever the jazz classroom was.
Huh. There you go.
So another one of my favorite Matt Tropman stories has to do with a recording session. And I think it was might have been for that, but it could have been for Continuum, which was your first album, right?
Right. Well, you produced it. You were there, man.
I was there. So that's what I'm trying to see. I wasn't there for this event, which was that you were playing, two quotes one quote and one thing stand out to me.
Okay.
The quote was you were having a hard time with a passage. And then, so you stopped and you expressed some manner of expletive. And then you said, get Rubank on the phone and have them send me a fingering chart stat.
Yeah, I did. I did some kind of rant that involved like, please call Rubank.
Yes.
I tend to get super mad at myself and kind of excoriate myself like out loud. I've always done. I know it's a bad habit, but.
Well, not to out you, but I mean, when I would ride around in your car, like all of the dashboard, where there had been a dashboard intended to be, there were gouges and every knob and air vent was angrily removed.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, okay. But the other recording session story was you were recording something with mute, and did you kick a stand over at one point? I can't remember.
I think this one was about a mute. I have kicked stands in my lifetime.
So there was a mute, and you were mad, and then you took the mute out and you like bashed it, as the story goes. I wasn't there, so you can confirm or deny. And then you looked up into the control room, and the student that you had borrowed the mute from was in the control room. And you were like, I will buy you a new mute.
Well, I mean, if you wreck stuff, it's only fair that, you replace.
I will buy you a new mute.
Oh, gosh. That was so funny. Oh,
we have a former colleague in Boston Brass who was once practicing and got so mad that he threw his trumpet against the wall.
Oh, no way.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
It'd be funny if he wasn't actually a trumpet player, but
yeah,
in fact, he was.
Over 20 years, my music rage has really, really diminished, but I still do take an angry look at my metronome every once in a while.
I understand. You always I'm having these like glimpses, and one of the things that always sort of blew me away about you was you have, and I assume you must still, but you had this amazing ability as a player to be able to play crazy high and then crazy low, like on the just at whim. The only other person that I've seen the ability to like play screaming high and then pedal notes instantly was Zoltan. Well, Andrew and Zoltan,
not me.
Monozel. You remember how they write those crazy parts for him? He's like in the stratosphere, and then he's like frack, 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 and it's like beautiful in both registers. And I just I could never understand how you could do that. That was the thing.
Neglect your mid range. That's what you do. No mid. Can only play high and low.
Matt, I've been meaning to talk to you about your mid range for a number of years now.
Pretty good. All right, so not to put you on the spot, but you had a horrible, horrible thing happen to you. Are you comfortable talking about that story?
My bike wreck?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't mind.
Okay, would you mind? You just said you didn't, so now you have to.
Would you, Matt, only if you don't mind.
No, it's all good. I don't mind. Just for the record.
This story makes me angry, and I wasn't even in the same time zone as you when it happened.
Yeah.
And now you would tell it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were going to like prompt me and be like,
no. And so that was it. There's the prompt. And then Matt told this awesome story, 3, 2, 1.
Well, so basically, when I lived in Michigan, I was really into cycling, and I was a road cyclist. I would go out on these back trails, paved roads, but like kind of rural in Battle Creek, where ironically I thought I was fairly safe. And I got hit by a car in a hit and run in June 2009. And that was quite a life-changing experience. I had a whole bunch of injuries, and I had to then go back and have a pretty big surgery on my arm, which caused me to get some nerve damage. And then my left hand was sort of paralyzed for a while, which was really trippy because you're waiting to see if your nerve will grow back, and they can't like look at it on an MRI and say, oh, it's coming back or it's not. You just have to wait and see if it does. And so if your nerve is going to grow back, it grows about the same pace as your hair. Right. So it took I could clench my left fist, but I couldn't lift my arm up or spread my fingers out. And so after about 6 months, you get this tiny little glimmer, and then you question it because your muscles are so weak by then. When it first comes back, the only muscle that works is super, super weak. So you get this tiny flash, and then you think you made it up, and then you have to like wait 24 hours for it to kind of recharge a little bit. But it did start to come back. And so I can detail the crash or the injuries or any of that stuff that you want. It kind of led me down an interesting path because when you have an experience like that, for one thing, people are super nice to you. And people that I hadn't talked to in years were calling me and sending me cards and things like that. And then, you have the kind of, I don't want to say cliche, but I can't really think of a better word of just like reassessing, what's important and what you're doing and what your life is like. And so I had a chance to do that. And, overall, it's something that I think has actually changed me for the better, even though it was definitely like a bad experience at the time. I don't know how much more detail you want, or.
Well, I think I have a couple questions. One, has anybody ever come, like, do you know who did it, or it's just like this is still just some anonymous a-hole?
No, I do. So they found the person that did it. Officer Tim from the state police was hot on the case, and he basically drove around rural Michigan trying to find like a car under a tarp that looked like it had hit a deer, and he did. He found a Kia Sportage fitting that description.
Wow, no kidding.
And the car, when it hit me, was going like almost 50, so like that's a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. And I had my helmet on, so that saved my life. But still, at 50, car versus bike, you should probably die, or at least be paralyzed, or something worse than what I had. So there's a tremendous feeling of like how lucky you are. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so then it was a woman that hit me who was on parole violation, and she was with the man in her life. I don't remember his name, and I'll withhold hers. But strangely enough, I never had like a feeling of anger or animosity toward her. Like she missed a stop sign going pretty fast and hit me, and then drove away, which is, shall we say, a pretty rude thing to do. But I could understand the panic of that moment. I feel like I wouldn't drive away. But somehow in a human way, I could kind of understand that. And I think she had like a really toxic relationship with her boyfriend. And I could totally imagine him being like, we got to get out of here. We're on parole violation. And there was other people there. So for whatever reason, like I just don't hold any anger towards that person.
Wow.
Well, that's amazing.
And I'm not a nice guy. I should add that. I mean, we know I can rage out on a mute.
Oh no, that's why we're so surprised, because you're really not that nice of a person. It all just doesn't add up. So did she face consequences?
She did. So that was like kind of a weird experience of having to like go to the courthouse a couple months later, and then she ended up getting a plea deal. So I didn't have to go testify. I was there to testify and all that kind of stuff. And then at the very last minute, she accepted a plea deal.
Wow.
So the other part of the story that's most interesting, I think, for the purposes of the conversation, is twofold. One, what was the process like to coming back to playing and teaching and performing and recording and doing all that stuff, like physically? And then what was it that, you said it changed you in, I don't remember what words you said, but in positive ways, I'll say it that way. And do you have a sense of, if you could unpack that, that'd be great. I don't care which direction you want to go in first. I just think we've been fortunate enough, Andrew and me, that people have shared kind of crazy things that have happened to them. A couple of different guests have had Bell's palsy and come back from that, and a couple have come back from just a variety of challenges. And so it's, I think, really helpful and useful to people to hear, what was the physical process like, and then why didn't you give up? Like, what kept you coming back for more?
Yeah, I don't have any other skills, and the ones that I do have are just barely employable. So I kind of needed to. But what was
the end.
What was weird about the physical part was that any other instrument that I played, I probably would have never been able to play again, except for maybe if I'd been a singer, because my right hand was okay. I broke my right pinky, but it was okay. It's actually bent inward now, so it's like a helpful body modification for playing a 5-valve tuba.
Full body modification. There's your follow-up record title. There you go.
What was the first one?
What was it? It was manufacturing.
Manifesting a memory.
It'll be a double album.
It will be. Except you need to do it like Guns N' Roses did, where they just released a double album, but 2 independent albums on the same day, so we all had to pay $36.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
Very smart.
This one was helpful body. What? I want to make sure I get it right.
Helpful body modification.
Modification.
So if you need me to break your pinky so you've got better dexterity, you just let me know, and I'll run your
Like
ass
trumpet
over.
players shaving the gap between their two front teeth. So you just got to.
I never heard that one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of them that have done that. The you just need the ask for the Tropman pinky.
But I had broken ribs and a broken hip and a really messed up left hand, but it didn't affect my chops at all. And I had a concussion, so I had some cognitive issues for a couple of months, or still perhaps, depending on your perspective. But I could still do all the euphonium and tuba things. Any other instrument like clarinet, I would never be able to play. Piano, anything that uses basically both hands. I can't move my slides on tuba that fast because I still have some weakness and like numbness in my left hand, but basically it's fine.
Wow.
And one thing about the coming back from playing was it was weird because this was in June of what year? 2009. I literally like 3 weeks ago had finished my DMA and I did my first recording session with Paul Ekus at Oberlin on tuba. And then it was the day before I was going to go down and do the next recording session that the accident happened. But then like 2 months later, I got a call from the Detroit Symphony that they were doing like all the Strauss tone poems that had euphonium that fall and Mahler 7 and the planets.
Wow.
And I was like, do I tell them that I can still play, but I can't really use my left hand? And I thought, nah, whatever. I'm just going to say yes. So I had this experience of playing all this like crazy hard rep with the DSO with my one hand that didn't work. And that kind of gave me some weird like confidence. I mean, you'll never be less nervous for a gig when you walk in knowing that you like should have died 2 months ago. It totally just changes the perspective.
Wow.
And there was lots of physical rehab. They say that musicians are some of the best at doing physical rehab because they're dedicated to it and they understand that it's like practicing. And they're always very motivated to get back. But I had like one of those like shock treatment things that I would put on my left arm to try to stimulate the nerve. And just like a whole bunch of sessions of physical therapy for the rest of my body. And what was the other part of your question, or did I answer that part?
You completely answered the physical part. And so then what, I mean, you danced around what kept you from quitting? Like why emotionally or psychically, what kept you coming back day after day after day? What sort of was behind that determination, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really thought of, should I quit? I actually kind of used music as a way to help my recovery. And then when I had to decide, because I lived in Battle Creek at the time, but I was teaching adjunct at Eastern, and I had to decide, did I want to teach that next semester starting in September? And I almost decided no, but instead I decided, yes, I would. And it definitely made me like a more patient and understanding teacher than I had been before. Mm-hmm. And
boy,
they also made me an honorary member of like every music fraternity that they could think of. It was like, oh my God, you're still alive. Here, be in this fraternity. And
he's here for a reason.
Yeah. But it's amazing how differently people treat you after something like that. I mean, if I had sustained the exact same injuries, like fallen off my back porch, people would have reacted a lot differently than when they find out that you were like run over by a car in a hit and run, because there's like this trauma and this shock and the fact that a crime was committed. And so it was a really interesting experience. And I'd never been through like a big medical thing in my life. So I spent a lot of time in hospitals and a lot of time seeing like way sicker people than I was, and people who, sad to say, every single day that I woke up after that accident, I knew that I was getting better. And I saw a lot of people that definitely weren't. So it puts a totally different perspective on things.
Boy, what a dose of reality. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and you alluded to the fact that it changed you in a positive way. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but is that kind of what you're alluding to? Or, I mean, can you help explain that more? I guess what other silver lining came out of that horrible thing?
It definitely made me a more understanding person. And when you have the sense of like, I don't want to sound too deep or cheesy, and I'm not a religious person, but an appreciation for, you should have probably been killed, but then you aren't, and so now you're here. So what are you going to do with that? And it didn't totally drastically change my sense of purpose in life, but in my interactions with people and in my daily life, and then even planning things more long term, that's always kind of there in the back of my mind.
Jeez,
it's a stunning story. I mean, I'm really appreciative that you shared it with us. I just think it's incredibly valuable for people to hear that. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I wrote a little article about it that's meant to be kind of humorous. That's called Euphonium Assassin, that people still ask me about sometimes. So you can look that up if you're so inclined.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Oh, cool.
Lance, did your running accident to give you the same kind of life perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the lesson I learned was get the tacos first.
Man, boy, that's one of the things you said right at the end there is super powerful. The perspective that you had, even dealing with all that, because I sure as hell am not going to sit here and tell you how I would react to that, because I would be talking out of my ass if I told you how I would react to anything like that, because nobody knows until they're doing it. But the fact that even though you were dealing with all that awful stuff, that you knew each day that you were getting better and that you were around people that was the opposite of their reality. That's that's some perspective.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I think just, having like a really strong family and friends around me, like if I'd been a gloomy Gus and sat around and felt like, why did this happen to me? Or I'm going to quit. I would have gotten a very stern talking to from the people from whom I inherited my music rage.
They would have done the equivalent of throwing you against the wall as if you were the trumpet.
Yeah, something like that. Sure.
Wow, what a powerful story. And the fact that you didn't and don't harbor any ill will, that's pretty inspiring, man. That's an overused word, but I gotta say that's pretty inspiring. I'm not sure. Again, maybe I wouldn't. Can't say I wouldn't, can't say I would, but I could. I wouldn't fault you even quietly to myself if you harbored ill will towards that woman for doing that to you. So that's impressive.
Well, and I am a grudge keeper, so I don't know where this sudden kindness comes from. Like I can still remember the guy that cut me off in traffic like 4 days ago. And like that guy, I think he's a bad person that doesn't know how to live his life.
And that's because you waited him to park and then lit his car on fire. I heard a story the other day from a friend got cut off by somebody and honked on his horn because the guy was like, he was talking on his phone and was like just being really reckless. And so my buddy honked on the horn, and then this guy like absolutely flipped out on my buddy, who probably should have just not honked. Right. And anyway, he is then getting off of the highway and then slows down so that he is then next to my buddy, and then he is talking on the phone with his left hand, and he rolls down this window and he sticks his hand out the window to flip my buddy the bird. And that was his phone hand, and he flipped it so hard that he dropped his phone out the window. Oh my God. So his cell phone exploded on the highway as it hit the pavement. And my buddy said that he almost drove off the road laughing because the guy was just absolutely it was the best revenge he said he'd ever gotten in his life. So
nice. Well, that's a good story.
Yeah, that is a good story. Yeah, that is pretty good. So
justice, instant justice,
street justice, man, street justice. There you go. So where do we want to take this, Lance? Who do you admire in the euphonium world today?
Oh, lots of people. Probably all the same guys you do and gals.
I bet you're right. But who are some names, not an exhaustive list because we didn't even tell you that we were asking you this, but who are some people that come to mind that you think are doing cool stuff to move the whole thing forward? Yeah,
so not to give too complicated of an answer, but I don't follow the euphonium world as well as I probably should. And like growing up, because Lance and I are a similar age, there were no euphonium recordings. at all. And you couldn't, so your inspirations were always not euphonium players. You had to just listen to other musicians. So I tended to listen to like pianists, string players, singers, and things like that.
Who are your favorites from those? That's an interesting question too.
So I grew up on Glenn Gould playing Bach on the piano.
Yeah, man. There you go. Now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah, and that was always my dad, who's not a musician, but has like a lot of musical knowledge and kind of innate talent. I know that's sort of a troubling, problematic term, innate talent, but he's got some. And he turned me on to that. He would be always playing those CDs or records around the house. And then when I got to college, my teacher, Fritz Kenzig, was like, you need to listen to singers. And so I started listening to like Fritz Wunderlich and Jussi Björling and Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, just like on a loop, like everything that I could get.
Wow. I got to ask you a Glenn Gould question. Do you prefer the 1955 or the 1981 Goldberg variations?
So if I'm having to pick, I think that I would pick the 55, but neither one of those would probably be like my favorite of him playing Bach on the piano.
And what would be?
I think I would say either the French suites or the first disc of the English suites.
Cool. There you go. Sorry. Now continue. I was just I was guessing, and I guessed correctly that you were going to have an answer ready to go. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yep. Just curious. So who else did you listen to?
Oh boy, any kind of violinist that I could get a cassette of. And my dad, before there was like a short craze, Lance might remember this in the early 90s, where people started to get very interested in Gregorian chant.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But my dad was like into that from like the 70s. So he'd be playing that in the house, and me and my sisters we thought we hated it at the time, and we would always just like roll our eyes when he'd be blasting the Gregorian chant. But I ended up listening to so much of that growing up.
Who are the violinists that you gravitate towards?
I really like Itzhak Perlman. I used to have all of his albums with, is it Samuel Sanders that he used to play with all the time? The Fritz Kreisler albums.
Sounds right.
That I still have. Isaac Stern and Jascha Heifetz.
Yeah.
I think Perlman might have been my favorite, but yeah.
I pegged you as an Oistrakh guy too.
Oh, I haven't taken a deep dive on Oistrakh, so I should definitely do that.
There you go. Lance, who's your favorite violinist?
Which one's that?
Don't say Brian Bowman.
Every note of pearl. Let's see. It would probably be Mark O'Connor.
There you go. It's a good answer. We'll accept that answer.
It's not bad. So, Andrew, I hate to break it to you, but 20 some years ago, there was a predecessor to the Brass Junkies, and it was a landmark effort called "What's the Deal with Classical Music," featuring Matt Tropman and Lance LaDuke. And we had this notion that there should be the equivalent of drive time DJs, but about classical music, because most classical music radio is, and that was Johann Sebastian Bach.
Stirring performance. Please donate before our fund drive ends.
When you said drive time, before you said time, I thought maybe it was like the two of you driving around, just getting really pissed at other drivers.
We did that too.
While you talked about classical music.
So we now, if it was today, we would have just started a podcast. But back in the day, Matt had an incredible. He had this, like, his basement was given over to audio equipment and fantastic speakers and huge stacks of CDs. And so then we went down in his basement and made this like goofy show about classical music. And do you remember any of this, Matt?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I remember it pretty well, I think.
Do you remember we had one of the segments was guess the consonants, and so you would say someone's name, and then the other person had to like instantly predict how many or guess how many consonants were in the
yes,
the artist's name.
We have like Sviatoslav Richter. It's like 24.
Yeah.
What?
Oh God! And we played it for people, and actually, I took it to WQED here in Pittsburgh, and they were like very, very nice, and they were like, "Yeah, I don't know
do you
what we would
remember,
do with it."
Lance, that they wanted to record a pilot with us?
Yeah,
And
that's
do you remember
right.
what day that pilot was scheduled to be recorded?
I do not.
And why it was canceled was the day it was scheduled to be recorded was September 12th, 2001.
OMG! I totally forgot that.
Yeah, right? Crazy.
Wow.
Holy crappage!
Day after Lance's birthday.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that.
true. Yeah.
Wow.
That wasn't my first birthday, but that is my birthday.
Wow. There wasn't too
amazing.
much.
I completely forgot about that. Wowzers. There you go. And it's like, how easy is it for a project to just get like knocked off the rails and then you lose your mojo and then
People move all over the country and, all that stuff happens. So
that's right. And you get hit by a car too soon.
I mean, it's been 11 minutes since we talked about it, so I think it's probably time to tell a joke. People are probably getting uncomfortable because we were so serious about it. Like they were waiting for one of us to be like, "So do you wish you were a better cyclist? You could have avoided the car
just a little faster, and I would have just scooted right around it."
You've been fine. You stunned me with the pilot. I totally forgot about that. I got to hit up Chris Fenimore. He's still affiliated with WQED. I wonder if he remembers that. Wow, man. Oh, Shevitz. Wow. How about that? There you go.
Wow.
See, we could have been famous, man.
There wasn't a lot of comedy happening the day after 9/11, was there?
Well, that's true. I thought you were going to sing classical music.
No. But I actually that just triggered a memory for me when it was obviously that was such an awful time for everybody, and I was barely affected. I mean, compared to lots and lots and lots of people. But I remember getting once the cell phones started working again, because I was in Boston at the time, and the couple of the planes took off from Boston, so there were a whole bunch of people who actually called and left me voicemails, and they were like, "The odds of you being on a plane," because I was flying all the time with Boston Brass, is like minuscule, but could you please just confirm to me that you were not?
Wow.
It's like. Hearing those messages, it was just kind of like I maybe got, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something like that, but it was kind of like, yikes, yeah. And I actually another memory I have, and I got a lot of them, but another memory I have is that when I saw when the Onion came out, like the back when it was a print edition, it was like 3 days later the Onion came out, and they came out on schedule, and I remembered seeing that, and one of their teasers for a fake story that didn't exist inside was like hugging up 10,000% in New York City, and it showed like a photo of like a cop hugging a woman, and
wow.
And there was an article about how a couple of the bombers were really mad because all the things that they had been promised in the afterlife, like that actually all these horrible things were now happening to them. And it was just like the Onion went on like usual. And I remembered that was, I still didn't really laugh at it too much, but it was like, it felt really reassuring that they kind of planted a flag and were just like, yeah, we're publishing a satirical newspaper. So even though we don't feel like it, because that came out on Friday. So this was like, yeah, they were writing that stuff. 9/11 was a Tuesday, and they were writing that stuff on a Thursday was when that had to go to the printer.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was right afterwards. And that was like one of the first moments where I was really like, this is going to be okay. Not tomorrow, not next week, but this is going to be okay. So
it's like that Gilbert Gottfried story from The Aristocrats.
Right.
Remember that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. How could you forget that?
He's on the dais for the Hugh Hefner roast, I want to say. I don't remember what roast he was up there for. And he told a joke that was a little too soon, apparently.
Yeah.
And then he launched into The Aristocrats, and he went, this is not the forum to explain The Aristocrats joke, but
no, it's
suffice to say, he allowed that room to have a little bit of comedic catharsis. He took him to a place, but man.
Yep.
Well, and now we've succeeded in making the whole bike crash thing seem like one of the lighter moments of the episode.
And then you had your little incident a few years later.
But more importantly, let's talk about my shoulder. That's really the tragedy.
Yeah, can you tell when it rains or things like that?
Oh, my lumbago's acting up. Gee, it's going to be a good one, Marjorie.
It tingles every time there's a new Euphonium video uploaded to YouTube anywhere in the world.
That's a constant tingle, dude.
True. I'd never sleep. Yeah. Constant tingle.
There's the third album.
Exactly. Constant CONSTANT tingle.
Oh, man. Well, it seems this is getting completely off the rails. So it seems like now would be a good time to awkwardly segue into our Yen segment. So Matt, you've been through a lot. And not just this interview, but with your accident and with a lot of things. So you're a resilient young man. So what advice would you have for Jens in this time of need for him dealing with his job problems?
Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that it all starts with the diaphragm. Right?
Are we talking about birth control? What's happening here?
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, you really got to keep everything really tight and flexed in your core, so that...
So we're still talking about birth control.
So flex your diaphragm. Do you do diaphragm muscles?
Oh yeah, no. I have like an electronic thing that I strap on that contracts my diaphragm muscles for me. It's the only successful infomercial product that I've ever bought, and I bought a lot of infomercial products.
What's it called, by the way?
The diaphragmer. They didn't really hit it with the name, and I think that's why it wasn't successful. But it's a really good product.
Like diaphragmatic, like automatic. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
See, if they named it that, then everybody'd be like, "Oh, sure, the diaphragmatic."
Right, Diaphragmco.
Yeah. I once did a blog post that ended up getting shared a bunch where I posted, it was called 10 best exercises to strengthen your diaphragm muscles.
Oh, nice.
And then the blog post was, I've scoured the internet and I've come with the with the conclusive list of the 10 best diaphragm strengthening exercises. And then I just listed 1 to 10 and left them all blank. That was the whole blog post. I was feeling punchy that night. Oh goodness. I think I was like watching American Idol with my in-laws or something, and I heard one more vocal coach talking about like singing from the diaphragm and needing a strong one, and I was like, all right, I'm going to fight American Idol with a blog post on my Tuba blog.
Curse you, Simon Cowell.
All right. So most of our guests have been focusing on like the neck up, whether it's the chops or his head, but so you're thinking south. you're thinking diaphragm.
Yeah, it all starts with the diaphragm, baby.
I like that your contraption automatically does so. It's like results without any effort too. That's gonna. If Jens was American, that would be screaming at him. He's Canadian. I mean, they're not as prone to shortcut taking as we are. I don't think, but
right.
But that's all right. Well, we might be able.
He's going to get pretty desperate, if his situation doesn't improve. So I assume he'll try anything.
There you go. There.
Should tell him to take up cycling.
Dude, I just remembered one of my the Onion once had 2 of the funniest headlines I've ever seen, again for fake stories, how they used to do like the on some page that didn't exist on like F9 and there was no F section. There were 2 on the same episode. One was a picture of a winding country road that was completely empty, not a car, person anywhere, and it says local area highway learns it was adopted. And then right below that was the Burger King logo, and it said Burger King set to unveil new low-fat cashier. Those people are smarter than me.
Yes.
They are. Yep, they are smarter than me. So anyway, not that that's like the highest bar ever, but anyway, Matt, this was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
this was
good
to talk to you.
Funny and inspirational and loose and carefree. It's been wonderful. So, all right, hang on for the bonus episode, which we are going to be serving up to our Patreon patrons. And thank you, Matt, for fitting us into your very busy Euphonium gigging schedule. So we really do appreciate it.
And Tuba, thank you.
And sorry, I forgot. Do you know how pissed all of us are that you Euphonium jocks have like exposed how easy the tuba is? People like you and Murchison, it's like, yeah, you don't just like you play it better than I do. It's not even like that you also play it. Yeah, exactly. Ben Pierce, like, yeah, screw all of you. So, and I mean that. I'm not just being radio funny. So anyway, all right. I think the bonus episode is going to be dark, kids. So you should check it out.
Okay. So I don't do anything. I just wait.
You just wait. So yeah, you wait your turn. Yeah, to Dublin on tuba. All right. That is going to do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.